Ever since Arnold Schwarzenegger went on The View via ABC/Disney and exposed them all for all of their lies, including those like Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sonny Hostin, etc., for their overall stance on immigration and how he really put them in their place and embarrassed them on live television, well, it recently got even worse when it came to Whoopi Goldberg actually striking back at Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, we know that there's been a lot of differing views on Arnold's take on immigration, but I thought it was a very interesting one at best. I think that it was a very interesting thing to say on live television. The fact that he actually went on there and surprisingly put those like Whoopi, Sonny, and Joy in their place, and it really made them look very embarrassed on live television. I think it's something that they wholeheartedly deserved. Now, one thing about Arnold is that we know that, yes, he is the ex-governor of California. We also know that he has had a lot of things against President Donald Trump. We all know this. This is exactly why it took a lot of fans by surprise when he went on live television, actually going through with his views on immigration. But let's get into the overall details about all of this. Now, what's interesting about Arnold and the whole drama going on after he appeared on The View is that Whoopi Goldberg is now trying to desperately go into damage control and is trying to actually take control of the situation on how she actually viewed Arnold, how the rest of the crew, or how the rest of the hosts, I should say, viewed Arnold on the set. So let's get into this. Now, ever since Arnold Schwarzenegger appeared on The View and exposed the truth with his view on immigration, the entirety of woke Hollywood and even members of The View had a massive meltdown. Now, one major development going on now involves more to do with the fact that Arnold and the entire situation revolving around him and The View, and how Whoopi Goldberg recently had an angered response after Arnold's comments on The View that were off script and unexpected. Whoopi delivered the following: "I was shocked. I was left in disbelief over what Arnold said, especially coming from an ex-governor of California, who should respect immigrants and respect those that are in this country. I thought comparing immigrants to guests like America was an awful way of putting it, and I know many great immigrants that come to this country. Nobody has any right to say or demand them to act like guests in a house." Again, I was caught off guard on what Arnold had to say, and it really split my spirit on his views with immigration. I just don't look at him the same anymore after hearing that. I was also left very confused as to why an ex-governor of California would say such a thing about innocent immigrants in this country that are being deported out of this country. And let me reassure everyone, we did not know Arnold held these views prior to bringing him on set for our show. I think Joy and Sonny felt the same. We were all just left so appalled over how he compared immigrants to how they should behave. What was that all about? I don't know, but it's something that should have been left inside his head, never on live television, and it's something that I did not advocate one bit. The entire view on immigrants, everyone has it backwards, you see, and I think Arnold's views are also misguided. What happens when all of those innocent immigrants are deported? Who's going to do the jobs that no Americans want to do? Ask yourselves that. This is why American citizens need to think twice before they say things, to think twice before they decide who they vote for in presidential elections, because what we are seeing right now with this administration is awful. And not even Arnold, who I once looked up to as a great California governor, suddenly belittles immigrants in such a strange way. Now guys, let me just stop here for one moment. Now, I like how Arnold put it out there that you have to do things legally, you have to come into this country legally, you can't come here illegally, and if you do come here illegally, then you're going to meet with some serious consequences, and that's the end of story. The fact that he had some level of common sense on The View and really just put them in their place, I think it really left a lot of people cheering. Even those that are opposed to Arnold's politics, we all know that he's not a fan of Trump by any means. Let's be very clear about that. But even people that know about that were cheering about Arnold and putting Whoopi, Joy, and Sonny in their place just for the sake of doing that on live television. I think it was a very grand moment in television history. This is exactly why ABC's The View is failing. Every single time they decide to try and lie to the general public, when they try to lie to the audience, and that's exactly what Whoopi Goldberg is doing here again. Look, we all know that Arnold, and what he was referring to was the fact that, you know, you have to do things legally, and if you do come here, you know, you really should contribute to society. You shouldn't do illegal acts or anything, you know, that would actually tarnish society or anything like that. Now, we all know that Whoopi Goldberg is the same unhinged Whoopi Goldberg that she's always been for the past, like, 10 or 12 years now, right? And it was very interesting because if you go back decades ago, Whoopi was never really like this. It wasn't until she really was on The View for an extended amount of time where she began to rapidly devolve into this new Whoopi Goldberg, where she just lashes out against anyone that's opposed to her politics, opposed to, her views on everything, and supporters of Trump, etc., etc. However, she goes on to conclude, "No, I'm sorry, but it's something I can't support. I think Arnold really needs to look back at what he said on tape because it was so misplaced. It just made no sense to me at all. Not to Sonny and not to Joy. We were all appalled. But what can you do? He's the ex-governor of California, and those are his views. The good news is that we still have Gavin Newsom, who is mistakenly labeled as a governor breaking the law. He is keeping the law intact. Everyone needs to watch more closely because I think Americans are also getting that backwards with Gavin Newsom. I think if anything, it's those that actually root for Trump that need to act like guests in a house, not the other way around when it comes to immigrants." So it seems like Whoopi Goldberg had a very big problem with the fact that Arnold said, if you come here to America, you gotta be treated as a guest. You have to contribute to society. You have to give something back to America, right? To make it America. And essentially, what he's talking about is perhaps, if you come in as an immigrant, let's say legally, a lot of people tend to create their own business, they contribute to society in that way, or they do other, various things. And he even touched on how he's an immigrant and how he actually created a crazy successful career, whether it's acting, bodybuilding, etc., and how he explained all of that. It was a very good point that he brought up on The View. So to have Whoopi Goldberg have a problem with that and obviously calling it out against Arnold, it goes to show you that they were that embarrassed on live television to the point where they're just trying to do damage control at this point. They're trying to make the historic moment of The View, and not in a good way, at least a little bit better for themselves, and it's actually doing quite the opposite. It's only making matters worse. And you know what? Shame on Disney, shame on Bob Iger for even allowing, Whoopi, Joy, and Sonny to make such lies over the years about immigration, about the border, etc., etc. That's just how it is on The View, and that's how it always will be as long as that show remains on the air. It's nothing full of lies. It's all full of lies, and that's how it's always going to be. And Arnold, I think, really kind of created a ripple effect that day when he really just said that on live television. You even saw Sonny Hostin grab Arnold's arm. I don't know if you saw that, but look to the right portion of the screen. Sonny was grabbing Arnold's arm like, stop it, you're not supposed to say that. Stop saying those comments. What are you doing? And it was that moment where people saw through all of the hosts of The View. The minute she grabbed his arm, we all knew exactly what was happening. So overall, I would love to hear what everyone has to say about Whoopi Goldberg and her views on Arnold, her views on immigrants, and her views on the border, etc., and everything else going on right now in the US. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today and everything else revolving around The View, ABC, Disney, etc., and I would love to hear what you guys have to say about Arnold as well, and I will catch you guys later.